You know, for over 4 decades now, one band has been living this fascinating double life. On the one hand, they're one of the most successful pop acts of all time, making these totally irresistible dance tracks. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find they're some of the sharpest, wittiest, and honestly, most scathing social critics out there. So let's get into the story of how the Pet Shop Boys pulled off being both at the exact same time.
Okay, let's just start with a number that is kind of mind-blowing. 42. That is the record-breaking number of top 30 singles the Pet Shop Boys have had in the UK. I mean, that's not just success, that's a level of chart dominance that is practically unheard of in pop history. They are, by any measure you want to use, an absolute hit machine. But that is where the paradox really kicks in, and it brings us to the big question we're going to unpack here. How on earth did this duo, these masters of the perfect 3-minute pop song, also become such brilliant commentators on things like class, politics, and greed? How did they manage to hide all that art and critique right there in plain sight? And just so we're all on the same page about their scale, we are talking about over 100 million records sold worldwide. This isn't some niche indie act. These guys are global pop titans. You got to remember this number because it was the absolute perfect camouflage for smuggling some pretty radical ideas right onto the dance floor. So how did this whole thing even start? Well, it wasn't your typical garage band story, not even close. Their formation was much more deliberate, almost like a strategic partnership between two very specific and, as it turns out, perfectly complementary talents. And check out this timeline. It's just incredibly efficient. They meet in '81, totally bonding over a shared love for electronic music. By '83, a chance meeting in New York gets them hooked up with a producer, and then bam, just 2 years after that, they're signing a major deal with Parlophone. Yep, the same label as the Beatles. It was just this rocket ship of an ascent, from a random meeting to the edge of superstardom.
And here's what made their partnership so unique, so potent. You had Neil Tennant, a journalist and deputy editor at the iconic pop magazine Smash Hits, so he understood the mechanics of pop music from the inside out. And then you had Chris Lowe, an architecture student who brought this incredible sense of structure and design to everything. So right from the very beginning, this was a project built on words and structure, on intellect and aesthetics.
So this completely unique partnership is what allowed them to build something that Neil Tennant himself would later call their imperial phase, a period where they had absolute creative and commercial dominance. Now, this is a really key concept to get. The imperial phase isn't just about having hits. It's about having the power to do exactly what you want artistically and having the entire world not only listen, but hang on your every word. It's that super rare moment when an artist's vision and what the public wants are in perfect, powerful sync. And their imperial power? It was undeniable. I mean, just look at this run of singles. We're talking 3 number ones in just over 2 years, including the re-recorded West End Girls, which went to number 1 all over the globe. They were absolutely inescapable. But the real secret, well, that was hiding in the lyrics.
Okay, here it is, the big aha moment. On the surface, you hear this and think, yep, that's the ultimate anthem for the greedy, aspirational 1980s. But it's not. Not at all. It's satire. Tennant was actually writing about these two kind of pathetic characters who were totally ill-equipped for success, just trying to exploit the superficiality of the era. The whole critique was hiding in plain sight right in the chorus.
And Opportunities wasn't just some one-off thing. Their big imperial phase albums, Please and Actually, are just jam-packed with these sharp critiques of Thatcher-era Britain, covering everything from privatization and consumerism to the decay of city life. Take this line from their song Shopping. It's not about a trip to the mall, you know. It's a direct, almost shockingly blunt commentary on the privatization of state-owned industries in the UK. They're literally talking about selling off the country's history to private companies, and they set the whole thing to this cool robotic dance beat. And maybe the most heartbreaking critique is in the song King's Cross. This line actually co-opts a common Thatcherite slogan, firm government, and just flips it to reveal its brutal reality. The song paints this bleak picture of urban neglect and shows how government policy literally hits the most vulnerable people in society. It's devastating, and it's on a number 1 pop album. Just wild. So okay, they had these incredibly sharp lyrics. We've established that. But how did they package them? Well, the sound and the visual identity were just as deliberate, just as thought out, creating this complete and totally cohesive artistic statement. Their sound was built on the most cutting-edge technology of the day. And this isn't just a random list of synthesizers. This was the toolkit they used to create these huge, cinematic, almost orchestral soundscapes. They were using these machines to literally build new worlds. And the heart of that whole electronic orchestra, the real mothership, was the Fairlight CMI. Now, this was an incredibly expensive and complex machine back then. It gave them the power to sample real-world sounds, anything, and create these incredibly intricate arrangements. It's what allowed a two-person band to sound so absolutely epic.
Now, their visual identity was this amazing study in contrasts, defined by two key collaborators. On one side, you had graphic designer Mark Farrow creating these pure, minimalist record sleeves. And on the other, you had avant-garde filmmaker Derek Jarman directing their lavish, theatrical stage shows. It's the perfect visual metaphor for the band itself, this cool, detached surface with a wildly subversive artistic world bubbling underneath.
I mean, think about this for a second. At the absolute peak of their fame, they would often refuse to even put their own faces on their album covers. Farrow's designs were this radical act of graphic purity. Instead of the usual "please buy me" smiles you see on pop stars, they gave you this cool, almost academic aesthetic, which just pushed them even further away from the typical pop machine.
All right, so where does all of this leave us? What is their lasting impact? Because the Pet Shop Boys weren't just some product of the 80s. Their influence runs deep, and it continues to shape music and culture even today.
And a massive part of that legacy is their journey with queer identity. You have to remember, the 80s, with things like Section 28 and the AIDS crisis, were a really hostile time, so their lyrics were often coded. But they evolved, and after Neil Tennant officially came out in 1994, they became much more open, basically providing a blueprint for how to navigate sexuality in the public eye.
So when you really boil it all down, they basically created a whole new blueprint for what a pop act could be. They helped mainstream queer identity in a massive way. They proved that dance music could be incredibly complex and smart. They made collaborating with high art figures cool. And they used technology to keep total artistic control. Every single one of those things was revolutionary.
And you can see their influence everywhere today. You can draw a direct line from the Pet Shop Boys to so many of today's most interesting artists, from Ollie Alexander, who's actually collaborated with them, to artists like Troye Sivan and Chappell Roan, who just embody that same spirit of smart, authentic, and completely unapologetic queer pop.
In the end, what the Pet Shop Boys really taught us is that a pop song can be so much more than just a pop song. It can be a Trojan horse for really complex ideas. Which kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? Who's doing that today? What artists right now are using an absolutely irresistible beat to make you stop and think about the world? The legacy of the journalist and the architect definitely lives on.